Sandra Bullock walked through the bright corridors of Space Station Omega-7. Her footsteps echoed softly on the metal floors as she made her way toward the shopping district. The station was huge, floating in space above Earth like a giant metal city. Through the large windows, she could see the blue and green planet below, looking peaceful and beautiful. Sandra was not the same person she had been many years ago. Back then, people knew her as a movie star. Now, at 63 years old, she was Dr. Sandra Bullock, one of Earth's most important scientists. She studied alien life forms and helped humans understand other species from across the galaxy. Her job was to make friends with alien races and help them work together with humans. Today was a special day. Sandra had a meeting with the Andromedan Trade Consortium tomorrow. These were powerful aliens who controlled trade routes between many star systems. If the meeting went well, Earth would get access to new technology and resources. Sandra needed to buy gifts for the alien leaders to show respect for their culture. She stopped in front of a store called Stellar Elegance. The name was written in gold letters that sparkled under the bright lights. Through the glass windows, she could see expensive items from all over the galaxy. There were crystal sculptures from the ice moons of Jupiter, silk fabrics that changed colors from the textile worlds, and jewelry made from rare metals found only in distant star systems. Sandra pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The store was quiet and cool. Soft music played in the background. The air smelled like expensive perfume. Everything looked perfect and clean. Display cases showed off the most beautiful and costly items she had ever seen. A tall man in a fancy black suit walked toward her. His hair was perfectly styled and his shoes were so shiny they reflected the lights above. He had a name tag that said Kevin Harper, store manager. Kevin looked Sandra up and down with cold eyes like he was judging her. "May I help you?" Kevin asked. His voice was not friendly. It sounded like he did not want to help her at all. "Yes, I'm looking for diplomatic gifts," Sandra said with a smile. "Something appropriate for Andromedan dignitaries. I have a trade meeting tomorrow and I want to show proper respect for their culture." Kevin's eyes got narrow. He looked at her again, this time more carefully. Suddenly his face changed. He recognized her. "Wait a minute," Kevin said with a mean smile. "You're Sandra Bullock, aren't you? The old movie star?" Sandra nodded. "Yes, but I'm here as Earth's cultural ambassador. I need gifts that will—" "Cultural ambassador?" Kevin laughed out loud. It was not a nice laugh. "You've got to be kidding me. You're just an actress. A washed-up Hollywood has-been who thinks she's important now." Other customers in the store turned to look. Sandra felt her face get warm with embarrassment. Near the jewelry counter, she saw two tall aliens with blue skin and silver robes. They were Zephyrians, a race known for loving Earth's movies and TV shows. They were watching the conversation with interest. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Sandra said quietly. She tried to stay calm and professional. "I have official credentials from the Earth government. I'm a trained xenobiologist and—" "I don't care what fancy titles you gave yourself," Kevin interrupted. He spoke louder now, making sure everyone in the store could hear him. "You're embarrassing our entire species. Sending actors to do real diplomatic work, it's a joke. You people from old Hollywood think you can just walk into serious galactic politics because you pretended to be smart in some movies." Sandra felt hurt, but she kept her voice steady. "I've spent 20 years studying alien cultures. I have 3 degrees in xenobiology and—" "Degrees?" Kevin laughed again. "Probably honorary ones they gave you because you're famous. Listen, lady, this is a serious establishment. We serve real diplomats, real scientists, real important people, not washed up entertainers playing dress-up." The Zephyrian aliens moved closer. One of them whispered something to the other in their musical language. They looked shocked and upset by Kevin's words. Sandra's hands shook a little, but she tried one more time. "Please, I just need to buy some gifts. I have the money and—" "Your money's no good here," Kevin said firmly. "I won't sell anything to someone who makes humanity look foolish. You and your actor friends have no business representing Earth. You should go back to making movies if anyone still wants to watch them." Other shoppers in the store stopped what they were doing. A group of Manthari traders near the back of the store were talking quietly among themselves. Their insect-like faces showed disapproval. Sandra could see that the aliens in the store were not happy with Kevin's behavior. Sandra took a deep breath. She had dealt with difficult people before. In her years of diplomatic work, she had learned to stay calm even when others were rude. "I understand you have concerns," she said in a professional voice. "But I assure you that I'm qualified for my position. Perhaps we could—" "Get out," Kevin said loudly. "Get out of my store right now. You're not welcome here. Find somewhere else to shop, somewhere that doesn't care about quality or reputation." The store became very quiet. Everyone was staring now. Sandra felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of everyone. She had worked too hard to build her reputation as a serious diplomat to let one mean person destroy her confidence. She turned toward the door, her head held high despite the embarrassment. As she walked past the Zephyrian customers, one of them spoke to her in perfect English. "Dr. Bullock," the alien said softly, "we are honored to meet you. Your work in xenocultural studies is respected throughout our system." This made Sandra feel a little better, but Kevin's words still hurt. She had dedicated her life to building bridges between humans and aliens. She had given up her acting career to serve Earth in a more meaningful way. To have someone dismiss all her hard work and education was painful. As she reached for the door handle, Sandra heard the soft sound of footsteps behind her. Someone else was entering the store. She paused and turned around, curious to see who it was. A man in simple clothes walked through the door. He wore a plain black jacket and dark jeans. His hair was a little messy, and he moved with a quiet, peaceful manner. There was something familiar about him, but Sandra was too upset to think clearly about where she might have seen him before. The man looked around the store and saw the tense situation. His eyes met Sandra's for a moment, and she saw kindness there. Then he looked at Kevin Harper, who was still standing with his arms crossed, looking proud of what he had done. Sandra wondered what would happen next. She had a feeling that this quiet stranger might change everything. The man in simple clothes walked into the store quietly. He moved like someone who was used to being calm in difficult situations. His dark hair had some gray in it, and his face showed the lines of someone who had lived through many experiences. There was something peaceful about him, but also strong. Sandra looked at him more carefully. There was definitely something familiar about his face, but she could not remember where she had seen him before. He was not dressed like the other customers in the expensive store. His clothes were plain and simple, the kind that working people wore. Kevin Harper noticed the new customer and rolled his eyes. After embarrassing Sandra, he was feeling very proud of himself. He thought he had shown everyone in the store how tough and important he was. "Great, another one," Kevin said under his breath, but loud enough for people to hear. He walked toward the man with the same unfriendly attitude he had shown Sandra. The quiet stranger looked around the store. His eyes took in everything. Sandra, standing by the door looking upset. The alien customers watching with concern, and Kevin approaching with an angry expression. The man's face remained calm, but Sandra noticed that his eyes were very alert, like someone who missed nothing. "Can I help you?" Kevin asked in the same rude tone he had used with Sandra. "Though I should warn you, this is a high-end establishment. We don't sell cheap tourist souvenirs here." The man looked at Kevin with patient eyes. "I'm just looking around," he said quietly. His voice was gentle but had something solid behind it, like steel covered with silk. Kevin studied the stranger's simple clothes and unimpressed attitude. "Let me guess, another actor? You people seem to think you can just walk in anywhere these days." He pointed toward Sandra. "I already told your friend there that we don't serve washed-up Hollywood types." The man turned to look at Sandra. When their eyes met, she saw understanding and kindness in his face. He walked over to her slowly. "Are you all right?" he asked Sandra softly. His voice was warm and concerned. Sandra felt some of her tension ease. It had been a long time since someone had shown her simple human kindness. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, though her voice showed she was still hurt by Kevin's words. "No, you're not fine," the man said gently. No one should be treated like that. Kevin Harper had been watching this interaction, and he did not like it. He was used to being the most important person in his store. Having two people ignore his authority made him angry. "Hey, you two," Kevin called out loudly. "I don't know what kind of reunion this is, but you're both bothering my customers. Either buy something expensive or get out." The man turned to face Kevin. His expression was still calm, but something had changed in his eyes. "We're not bothering anyone," he said quietly. "We're just talking." "Not in my store, you're not," Kevin said. He was getting more aggressive now. "I already told the lady that Hollywood people aren't welcome here. That goes for you too, whoever you are." The Zephyrian aliens near the jewelry counter were whispering to each other in their musical language. They kept looking at the quiet man with growing excitement. One of them pulled out a small device and seemed to be checking something on it. Kevin noticed the aliens talking and became even more irritated. "See? You're disrupting my real customers, the ones who actually matter in the galactic community." The man looked at Kevin with the expression that was part sadness and part disappointment. "Is that really how you see other people? As some who matter and some who don't?" "That's exactly how I see it," Kevin said proudly. "This galaxy runs on respect and real achievement, not on pretending to be someone you're not in movies. Real diplomats, real scientists, real soldiers, they're the ones who make a difference, not actors playing make-believe." Sandra watched this conversation with growing interest. There was something about the way the quiet man spoke that reminded her of the diplomatic training session she had attended. He had the same careful way of choosing words that she had seen in experienced negotiators. Meanwhile, more alien customers had noticed what was happening. A group of Manthari traders had stopped their shopping to listen. Their large compound eyes were focused on the quiet man, and they were making soft clicking sounds that Sandra recognized as signs of recognition. Kevin was too focused on his anger to notice what the aliens were doing. "You know what?" he said to the quiet man. "I don't like your attitude. You think you're better than me just because you're trying to be all calm and wise. Well, let me tell you something. I've built a successful business here by knowing who's important and who's not. And you two definitely fall into the not category." The man listened to Kevin's words without getting angry. When Kevin finished talking, he simply nodded slowly. "I understand," the man said. "You believe that some people are more valuable than others based on their jobs or their fame. But what if you're wrong? What if the person you're dismissing is someone who has actually done important things?" Kevin laughed harshly. "Like what? Made some movies that entertained people? Given some speeches at award shows? Please, I deal with real power here. Military leaders, trade officials, scientific researchers, people who actually shape the galaxy." The quiet man glanced around the store again. The alien customers were now openly staring at him. Some of them had their communication devices out and seemed to be sending messages to people outside the store. "You mentioned soldiers," the man said thoughtfully. "What if someone had served in the Void Wars? Would that make them worthy of your respect?" Kevin snorted. "The Void Wars ended 6 years ago. If you had actually served, you'd have medals and a uniform, not cheap civilian clothes." "And what about diplomats?" the man continued. "People who negotiate peace treaties between different species?" "Real diplomats have credentials and official positions," Kevin said. "They don't wander around in regular clothes pretending to be humble." Sandra was beginning to understand that this conversation was leading somewhere. The quiet man was asking very specific questions, and the alien customers were getting more and more excited as they listened. One of the Zephyrians suddenly made a sound like a musical gasp. He said something quickly to his companion in their own language, then pulled out a larger communication device. Within seconds, Sandra could see movement outside the store windows. Other aliens in the corridor were stopping to look toward the store. The Manthari traders were now clicking rapidly among themselves. Their antennae were twitching with what Sandra recognized as extreme agitation, not anger, but excitement mixed with awe. Kevin, still focused on his argument with the quiet man, had not noticed any of this. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing," he said, "but I'm done with both of you. Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily." The man looked at Kevin with what might have been pity. I'm not playing any games, he said, softly. I just think it's sad when people judge others without really knowing who they are. I know exactly who you are, Kevin said confidently. You're nobody special, just like your actress friend there. At that moment, one of the Zephyrian customers stepped forward. His silver robes rustled as he moved, and when he spoke, his voice carried the formal tone that his species used for very important occasions. Excuse me, the Zephyrian said, addressing the quiet man directly. Would you be Keanu Reeves? The store became completely silent. Sandra felt her heart skip a beat. Now she knew why the man had looked familiar. Kevin Harper's confident expression began to change as he realized that something was very wrong with his assumptions. The man looked at the Zephyrian and gave a small, gentle smile. Yes, he said simply. I am. The silence in the store was so complete that Sandra could hear her own heartbeat. Kevin Harper stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. His face had gone from confident to confused, to something that looked like growing fear. The Zephyrian alien stepped closer to Keanu, his silver robes flowing like liquid metal. When he spoke again, his musical voice filled the quiet store with formal words that carried deep respect. Honored Envoy Reeves, the alien said, bowing his head low. Keeper of the sacred balance, voice of peaceful wisdom, we are blessed to be in your presence. Sandra felt her legs go weak. She had heard those titles before, in diplomatic briefings and government meetings. Every human who worked in galactic affairs knew about the legendary Keanu Reeves, but few had ever seen him in person. He was more myth than man to most people. The second Zephyrian joined his companion, also bowing deeply. Great mediator, he said in accented English, the one who prevented the Great War. Your wisdom has saved countless lives across 17 star systems. Keanu looked uncomfortable with the formal titles. Please, he said gently, just call me Keanu. We're all equals here. But the aliens were not the only ones who had recognized him. The Menthari traders were now clicking excitedly and moving toward the front of the store. Their large compound eyes were fixed on Keanu, with something that looked like worship. One of the Menthari, taller than the others, stepped forward. His voice was deep and buzzing like the sound of many insects talking at once. Speaker for Earth, he said in careful English. The Hive Mothers still sing songs of your great deed at the Battle of Proxima Station. Kevin Harper was looking back and forth between Keanu and the aliens like he was watching a tennis match. His confident swagger was completely gone. Wait, he said weakly. Who are you, really? Sandra found her voice. You don't know who he is? She asked Kevin, her voice full of amazement. This is Keanu Reeves, Earth's special envoy for interspecies relations, the man who single-handedly prevented the galactic war of 2381. That's impossible, Kevin said, but his voice cracked as he spoke. He's just some guy in regular clothes. He can't be. Through the store window, Sandra could see that word was spreading fast through the space station. Aliens of many different species were gathering outside, pressing their faces against the glass to get a look inside. Security guards were trying to control the growing crowd, but more beings kept arriving. A small, furry creature that Sandra recognized as a Valdorian pushed through the crowd of aliens in the store. Valdorians were known for their perfect memory and their role as record keepers for the Galactic Council. Master Reeves, the Valdorian said in a high, squeaky voice, the Council records show 14 major peace treaties negotiated by your hand, 6 wars prevented through your diplomacy, 3 entire species saved from extinction because of your intervention. Keanu looked embarrassed by all the attention. I had a lot of help, he said modestly. I never worked alone. But the aliens were not finished. More were speaking up now, each one sharing stories that made Kevin Harper look smaller and smaller. You learned our language in just 6 months, said a tall, blue-skinned Andromedan who had just entered the store. You spoke to our High Council in perfect ancient Andromedan, showing respect for traditions that most humans don't even know exist. You studied with the Zen masters of Proxima Centauri for 3 years, added another voice. This came from a being Sandra didn't recognize with crystal-like skin that sparkled under the store lights. You achieved enlightenment in their highest teachings. You speak 17 different alien languages fluently, said the first Zephyrian. You understand our cultures better than most of our own young people do. Kevin was backing away from Keanu now, his face white with shock and growing terror. But you're supposed to be just an actor, an old movie star, that's what everyone says. Keanu turned to look at Kevin with the same patient expression he had worn throughout their conversation. I was an actor, yes, a long time ago, but people change. They grow. They find new purposes in life. Sandra was putting pieces together in her mind. Stories she had heard in diplomatic circles, legends that were whispered in government meetings now made sense. You disappeared from Hollywood 25 years ago, she said to Keanu. Everyone wondered where you went. I went to learn, Keanu said simply. The galaxy is a big place full of different kinds of people. I wanted to understand them, to help build bridges between their worlds and ours. The Manthari trader who had spoken earlier clicked his mandibles together in what Sandra knew was a sign of deep respect. You saved our colony ship when it was attacked by space pirates. 2,000 of our young were aboard that vessel. You negotiated the mining rights agreement that prevented war between the Centauri Federation and the Outer Rim Alliance, added the Andromedan. Billions of lives were saved because you found a solution both sides could accept. Kevin Harper was now pressed against a display case, looking like he wanted to disappear entirely. The reality of what he had done was sinking in. He had insulted and tried to throw out one of the most respected humans in the galaxy. More aliens were still arriving. The store was getting crowded, but everyone was being respectful and quiet. They just wanted to be in the same room as Keanu Reeves. A new voice spoke from near the entrance. He killed 17 Void Raiders with his bare hands to protect a refugee camp, said a scarred warrior from a species Sandra didn't recognize. But he also spent the next day helping the orphan children learn to read. He can pilot any spacecraft ever built, said another alien. But he uses that skill to deliver medical supplies to remote colonies. He is trained in 47 different forms of combat, added a third voice. But he hasn't drawn a weapon in anger for over 6 years. Keanu raised his hand gently, and the room became quiet again. Please, he said. All of that is in the past. I'm just here to buy some gifts like Dr. Bullock was trying to do. He turned to Sandra and smiled warmly. I'm sorry about what happened to you earlier. You didn't deserve that treatment. Sandra felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, she said softly. Kevin Harper made a small choking sound. Everyone in the store turned to look at him. His face was now completely pale, and his hands were shaking. I didn't know, Kevin whispered. Oh God, what have I done? Keanu looked at Kevin with the same patient expression he had shown throughout their entire encounter. There was no anger in his eyes, no desire for revenge, just understanding and maybe a little sadness. You didn't know because you didn't ask, Keanu said gently. You made assumptions about both of us based on what you thought you knew. The crowd of aliens watched this exchange with great interest. Many of them had their recording devices out, documenting this historic moment. Sandra realized that whatever happened next would be talked about across the galaxy for years to come. Kevin Harper was about to learn what it meant to face the consequences of insulting two of the most important humans in galactic civilization. But knowing Keanu's reputation for mercy and wisdom, Sandra suspected that even Kevin might be surprised by what came next. Kevin Harper stood against the display case, shaking like a leaf in a storm. His face was white as paper and sweat was running down his forehead. Everyone in the store was looking at him, waiting to see what would happen next. The alien customers were whispering among themselves in their different languages, but Sandra could tell they were all saying the same thing. Kevin had made a terrible mistake, and now he would pay for it. In galactic society, insulting someone of Keanu's importance was almost unthinkable. Sandra watched Keanu carefully. She had heard stories about his legendary temper when someone threatened innocent people. There were tales of him destroying entire pirate fleets when they attacked refugee ships. If he wanted to, he could end Kevin's career with a single message to the Galactic Trade Council. He could have Kevin banned from working anywhere in civilized space. But Keanu just stood there looking at Kevin with those calm, patient eyes. He seemed to be thinking about something. The silence stretched on, making everyone more nervous. Finally, Keanu moved. But what he did next shocked everyone in the store. He walked slowly toward Kevin Harper. When he was just a few feet away, Keanu did something that made every alien gasp in surprise. He dropped down to one knee, placing himself lower than Kevin. It was a position of respect, not dominance. "What are you doing?" Kevin whispered, his voice full of confusion and fear. Keanu looked up at Kevin from his kneeling position. His voice was gentle and sincere. "I want to understand," he said. "I want to know what pain you're carrying that made you treat Dr. Bullock so badly." The aliens in the store were making sounds of amazement. The Zephyrians were humming in harmony, which Sandra knew was their way of showing deep emotional response. The Manthari were clicking rapidly, and even the stoic Valdorian was making soft whistling noises. "I don't understand," Kevin said. His voice was getting higher with panic. "You should be angry. You should be destroying my life right now. I insulted you. I called you nobody special." Keanu smiled sadly. "Being angry won't help anyone, and destroying your life won't make Dr. Bullock feel better. I'd rather understand why this happened." Kevin was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "You don't know anything about me," he said between sobs. "You're right," Keanu said from his kneeling position. "But I'd like to. Will you tell me?" Sandra felt her heart breaking as she watched this scene. Here was one of the most powerful humans in the galaxy, humbling himself before someone who had treated him terribly. It was the most incredible act of compassion she had ever witnessed. Kevin looked around the store at all the alien faces watching him. Some looked curious, others looked disapproving, but none looked hateful. Slowly, his defenses began to crumble. "My brother," Kevin whispered. "My little brother Danny." Keanu's expression changed slightly. Something flickered in his eyes like he was remembering something important. "Danny Harper," he said quietly. "Sergeant Danny Harper, 3rd Infantry Division, Void War Regiment." Kevin's eyes went wide. "You knew him?" "He served under my command during the Battle of Kepler Station," Keanu said softly. "He was one of the bravest soldiers I ever met." Now Kevin was sobbing openly. "He died in that battle. He was only 22 years old." Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, like he was experiencing old pain. "I remember," he said. "A Void Raider ship was about to ram a transport full of Altarian refugees. Danny threw himself into the engine room to redirect the ship's power to the shields. He saved 400 alien civilians. He always talked about his big brother Kevin." Keanu continued, his voice full of warmth. "He said you worked in luxury retail and that you were the smartest person he knew. He said you taught him to read when he was little because your parents were too busy working." Kevin collapsed into a nearby chair, his whole body shaking with grief. "I couldn't protect him," he whispered. "I was his big brother and I couldn't save him." Keanu stood up slowly and moved to sit in a chair next to Kevin. "Danny didn't need protecting," he said gently. "He made a choice to save others. It was the most heroic thing I've ever seen anyone do. But he's gone," Kevin said. "And it's because of this galaxy, these alien wars, all of it. I blame them for taking him away from me." Sandra watched as understanding spread across Keanu's face. "So when you see humans working with aliens, it reminds you of what you lost." Kevin nodded miserably. "I know it's not logical. I know those refugees didn't ask to be attacked, but I hurt so much, and I needed someone to blame." The store was completely quiet now. Even the crowd outside had stopped their chatter to watch through the windows. Everyone could sense that something important was happening. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal object. It was Danny's military medal, the one given to soldiers who died saving others. "I've been carrying this for 6 years," he said. I always hoped I'd find a way to get it to his family. Kevin took the medal with trembling hands. Fresh tears started flowing down his face. He used to call me on video chat every week from his ship, Kevin said. He'd tell me about all the different aliens he was meeting. He said they weren't so different from humans once you got to know them. Danny was right, Keanu said softly. He understood something that took me years to learn. We're all just people trying to take care of the ones we love. One of the Zephyrian aliens stepped forward carefully. Sir, he said to Kevin in his musical voice, your brother's sacrifice is known throughout our home system. We built a memorial garden in his honor. Many of our children are alive today because of what he did. Kevin looked up at the alien with surprise. Really? The refugees he saved included my youngest daughter, the Zephyrian continued. She is now a doctor, helping others as your brother helped her. His legacy lives on in every life she saves. More aliens began to speak up. The Manthari trader approached Kevin slowly. The colony ship your brother helped protect carried the genetic samples needed to restart our species after the Void War, he said. Without his sacrifice, the Manthari race would have gone extinct. A small Valdorian pushed through the crowd. Your brother is listed in our official histories as one of the great heroes of the Void War. His name is taught to our children alongside the names of our own greatest warriors. Kevin was staring at all these aliens with wonder and confusion. I thought you were all just taking from us, using us for your wars. Keanu put a gentle hand on Kevin's shoulder. The galaxy is complicated, he said. There are good people and bad people among every species, including humans. But most of us, alien or human, just want to live in peace and take care of our families. Sandra watched as something changed in Kevin's face. The anger and bitterness that had been there before was slowly being replaced by something else. Understanding, maybe. Or hope. I've been so wrong, Kevin whispered. About everything. About you. About Dr. Bullock. About all of this. Keanu smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Being wrong isn't a crime, he said. Staying wrong when you know better. That's the real problem. The crowd of aliens began to murmur among themselves. Sandra realized they were witnessing something that would become legend. The story of how Keanu Reeves turned an enemy into a friend through compassion instead of punishment. Kevin Harper sat in the chair holding his brother's medal, tears still flowing down his face. But these were different tears now. Not tears of anger or bitterness, but tears of understanding and regret. He looked around the store at all the alien faces watching him with patience and kindness. I don't know how to fix this, Kevin said quietly. I've been so angry for so long. I've hurt people who didn't deserve it. I don't know how to make it right. Keanu leaned forward in his chair. The first step is admitting you want to change, he said gently. You've already done that. The second step is taking action. What kind of action? Kevin asked. He sounded like a lost child asking for direction. Keanu was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. Sandra could see his mind working, planning something. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with purpose. There's a program I've been working on, Keanu said. It's called the Cultural Bridge Initiative. We help humans understand alien cultures, and we help aliens understand human culture. But we need people who can work in both worlds. Kevin wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. You want me to work with aliens? After everything I've said and done, I want you to work with the families that your brother died protecting, Keanu said firmly. The refugee communities that are still struggling to rebuild their lives. They need someone who understands loss and pain because they've experienced both. Sandra watched this conversation with growing amazement. Only Keanu would think to turn someone's greatest weakness into their greatest strength. But I don't know anything about their cultures, Kevin protested. I've spent years avoiding them, hating them. That's exactly why you're perfect for this job, Keanu said with a small smile. You'll be learning alongside them. You'll make mistakes, and they'll forgive you, just like they're forgiving you now. And in the process, you'll help other humans who are struggling with the same feelings you've had. The Zephyrian alien who had spoken earlier stepped forward. If I may, he said in his musical voice, we would be honored to have Kevin join our cultural exchange program. Many of our people still struggle with trauma from the war. Someone who understands grief could help them heal, the Manthari trader clicked his mandibles together in agreement. Our young ones need to learn human customs if they are to succeed in galactic society, but they also need to learn from someone who truly understands the cost of peace. Kevin looked overwhelmed by these offers. Why would you want to help me? I was horrible to you. I said terrible things. The small Valdorian spoke up in her squeaky voice. Because that is what your brother would have wanted, she said simply. In our records, we have his final message. He said he hoped that humans and aliens would learn to see past their differences and find their common ground. This made Kevin cry again, but Sandra could see that he was beginning to understand something important. His brother's death hadn't been meaningless. It had been part of something bigger, something that could still make a difference. Sandra felt inspired by what she was seeing. Kevin, she said, stepping forward, I have an idea too. The Galactic Unity Summit is happening in 6 months. We need people who can help coordinate cultural exchanges between different species. Someone with your experience in high-end customer service would be perfect for managing diplomatic protocols. Kevin looked at Sandra with surprise. You would trust me with something that important, after what I did to you? Sandra smiled warmly. Everyone deserves a second chance, she said. Besides, you understand now what you didn't understand before. That makes you valuable in a way you weren't before. Keanu nodded approvingly. Dr. Bullock is right. The summit will need people who can work with dignitaries from dozens of different worlds. Your brother would be proud to know you were helping, to build the peace he died for. Kevin stood up slowly, still holding Danny's medal in his hand. He looked around the store one more time, seeing it with completely different eyes. The alien customers weren't enemies or threats anymore. They were people, just like him, trying to make their way in a complicated galaxy. I'll do it, Kevin said, his voice stronger now. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. I want to honor Danny's memory the right way. The aliens in the store began making sounds of approval. The Zephyrians hummed in harmony again. The Manthari clicked happily, and even the crystal-skinned being that Sandra still didn't recognize sparkled more brightly. But the transformation wasn't over yet. Through the store windows, Sandra could see that news of what was happening had spread throughout the station. Alien dignitaries from all over were gathering outside, wanting to witness this historic moment. A tall, elegant figure pushed through the crowd and entered the store. Sandra recognized her immediately. It was Ambassador Lyra of the Andromedan Trade Consortium, the same group Sandra was supposed to meet with tomorrow. Dr. Bullock, Ambassador Lyra said in perfect English, I heard about what happened here today. The story is already spreading through diplomatic channels across 3 star systems. Sandra felt nervous. Had this incident damaged her reputation? Would the trade negotiations be affected? But Ambassador Lyra was smiling. The Andromedan High Council has asked me to extend an invitation to you, she continued. We would like you to serve as the official cultural heritage advisor for the Galactic Unity Summit. Sandra's mouth fell open. Cultural heritage advisor? But that's one of the most important positions in galactic diplomacy. Exactly, Ambassador Lyra said. We have been watching your work for years, Dr. Bullock. Your research on cross-species cultural understanding is brilliant. But today, you have shown something even more valuable: grace under pressure and forgiveness in the face of injustice. She turned to look at Kevin. And we would like Mr. Harper to serve as your assistant coordinator if he is willing. Kevin looked shocked. Me? But I don't have any qualifications for diplomatic work. Ambassador Lyra smiled kindly. You have. The most important qualification of all, she said. You have learned to see beyond your own pain to understand the pain of others. That is the foundation of all successful diplomacy. Keanu stood up and put his hand on Kevin's shoulder. This is how we honor the people we've lost, he said quietly. Not by holding on to anger, but by building something better. Sandra felt tears of joy in her eyes. Kevin, this means we'll be working together. The Cultural Heritage Advisor position Involves preserving and sharing the artistic and cultural treasures of hundreds of different worlds, including Earth's entertainment history, Ambassador Lyra added with a knowing smile. We believe that human cinema and television have been some of the galaxy's greatest gifts for building understanding between species. Kevin laughed through his tears. So actors and entertainment really are important for galactic diplomacy? The most important, Keanu said with a grin. Art and stories help us understand each other's hearts. That's more powerful than any weapon or technology. The crowd outside had grown even larger. Sandra could see news reporters from several different species setting up their equipment. This story would be told across the galaxy, not as a tale of conflict and revenge, but as a story of forgiveness and transformation. Kevin looked down at his brother's medal one more time, then looked up at the faces around him. Danny always said that the best way to honor the dead was to live better than they had the chance to, he said. I think I'm finally ready to do that. Sandra knew that this was just the beginning. They had 6 months to prepare for the biggest diplomatic event in galactic history, and they would be working with species and cultures that Kevin was only just beginning to understand. But she also knew they would succeed, because they had learned the most important lesson of all, that understanding and compassion could transform even the deepest hatred into hope. 6 months had passed since that life-changing day in the luxury store. The Galactic Unity Summit was finally here, and Space Station Omega-7 had been transformed into the most important meeting place in the galaxy. Delegates from over 200 different worlds had gathered to discuss trade, peace, and cultural exchange. Kevin Harper stood in the main conference hall, wearing the formal blue uniform of a cultural heritage coordinator. He looked completely different from the angry, bitter man he had been 6 months ago. His face was calm and confident, and his eyes held the wisdom that came from understanding his own mistakes and learning from them. He was checking the cultural display tables one final time before the opening ceremony began. Each table represented a different world, showing art, music, literature, and technology from across the galaxy. But the largest display was dedicated to Earth, and it was Kevin's responsibility to manage it. The Earth display included everything from ancient cave paintings to modern space exploration equipment. But the centerpiece was a section dedicated to Earth's entertainment industry. Movies, television shows, music, and books that had touched the hearts of beings across the galaxy. Everything looks perfect, said a familiar voice behind him. Kevin turned to see Sandra Bullock approaching. She wore the elegant silver robes of a cultural heritage advisor, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling. I never thought I'd be nervous about a movie display, Kevin said with a laugh. 6 months ago, I thought entertainment was useless. Now I understand it's one of our most powerful diplomatic tools. Sandra smiled warmly. You've come a long way, Kevin. Danny would be proud of what you've accomplished. Kevin touched the small medal he now wore on his uniform, his brother's medal, which he carried everywhere as a reminder of the price of peace and the importance of protecting others. I still think about him every day, Kevin said. But now, I think about how he'd want me to use that memory to help people, not hurt them. Through the large windows of the conference hall, they could see ships arriving from all over the galaxy. Massive Andromedan cruisers floated next to tiny Valdorian scout ships. Zephyrian vessels that looked like flying crystals shared space with the practical, boxy ships of the Manthari fleet. 5 minutes until the opening ceremony, announced a voice over the communication system. All delegates, please take your positions. Kevin and Sandra walked toward the main stage where the ceremony would begin. As they passed the various alien delegations, Kevin was amazed by how many of them greeted him by name. The young Zephyrian, who had been learning human customs under Kevin's guidance, waved excitedly. A group of Manthari traders clicked their mandibles in friendly greeting. But the biggest change was in Kevin himself. 6 months ago, he would have seen these aliens as threats or annoyances. Now he saw them as friends, colleagues, and people he genuinely cared about. They found their seats in the special section reserved for cultural coordinators. From here, they had a perfect view of the stage where the opening ceremony would take place. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all species, announced the ceremony host, Please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Sandra Bullock, Cultural Heritage Advisor for the Galactic Unity Summit. Sandra stood up and walked to the podium. The massive hall fell silent as delegates from hundreds of worlds turned their attention to her. Kevin felt a surge of pride for his friend and colleague. 6 months ago, Sandra began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced sound system, I was shopping for diplomatic gifts in a simple store. I was insulted and embarrassed by someone who thought that entertainment and art had no place in serious galactic politics. Kevin felt his face get warm, but Sandra looked directly at him and smiled. That person was wrong, Sandra continued, but not because he was a bad person. He was wrong because he was in pain, and pain sometimes makes us forget our better nature. Today, that same person is my valued colleague and one of the most effective cultural coordinators in the galaxy. The alien delegates turned to look at Kevin, and many of them nodded approvingly. Several made sounds of approval in their various languages. This summit exists because we have learned that our differences are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated, Sandra said. Human entertainment, our movies, our music, our stories. These are not distractions from serious diplomacy. They are the heart of diplomacy itself. She gestured toward the Earth display. When a Zephyrian child watches an Earth movie about friendship, they learn that humans value loyalty and compassion. When a Menthari trader reads a human book about adventure, they understand our desire to explore and discover. When an Andromedan diplomat listens to human music, they hear the emotions that connect all thinking beings. The audience was completely engaged now. Kevin could see delegates from dozens of species nodding along with Sandra's words. But the most important thing we've learned, Sandra continued, is that understanding goes both ways. We don't just share our culture with others, we learn from theirs as well. Human diplomats who study Zephyrian poetry become better negotiators. Human scientists who learn Manthari mathematics make breakthrough discoveries. Human philosophers who meditate with Andromedan mystics find new ways to solve old problems. At the back of the hall, Kevin noticed a familiar figure entering quietly. It was Keanu Reeves, wearing his simple civilian clothes as always, trying not to draw attention to himself. But as soon as the alien delegates spotted him, a wave of respectful whispers spread through the crowd. Sandra saw him too, and smiled. Our final lesson, she said, comes from someone who taught me and my colleague Kevin the true meaning of wisdom. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to use your power at all. Sometimes the strongest response to hatred is compassion. Sometimes the best way to win is to help your enemy become your friend. Keanu found a seat near the back, but Kevin could see that his presence had changed the energy in the room. Every alien delegate knew his story, and many of them had been personally affected by his work for peace. Today we begin a new chapter in galactic history, Sandra concluded. Not as separate species competing for resources, but as a united community sharing our gifts with each other. We are stronger together than we could ever be apart. The applause was thunderous. Beings from hundreds of worlds clapped, clicked, hummed, and made whatever sounds their species used to show approval. It went on for several minutes. As Sandra returned to her seat, Kevin felt overwhelmed by emotion. 6 months ago, he had been consumed by anger and prejudice. Now he was part of something bigger than himself, something that honored his brother's sacrifice and made the galaxy a better place. Thank you, he whispered to Sandra as she sat down next to him. For what? She asked. For giving me a second chance. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Sandra patted his hand gently. That's what friends do, she said. We help each other become the people we're meant to be. The ceremony continued with presentations from delegates, representing every major species in the galaxy. But Kevin's mind was on the future, the cultural exchange programs they would build, the misunderstandings they would prevent, and the bridges they would construct between different worlds. As the day went on, Kevin worked with delegates from dozens of species, helping them understand Earth culture and learning about their own traditions in return. He coordinated art exhibitions, musical performances, and literary readings. Each interaction taught him something new about the galaxy he now called home. Late that evening, as the formal sessions ended and delegates began to mingle informally, Kevin found himself standing with Sandra and Keanu near the Earth display. They watched as aliens from across the galaxy examined human art and artifacts with genuine curiosity and appreciation. "You know what the most amazing thing is?" Kevin said, looking at a group of young Zephyrians who were laughing at an old Earth comedy film. "6 months ago, I thought they were taking something away from us. Now I realize we're all giving gifts to each other." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That's the secret of true strength," he said. "It's not about being the most powerful or the most advanced. It's about being the most generous." Sandra was watching a Manthari child who was carefully drawing a picture of a human family. "Your brother understood that," she told Kevin. "He gave his life to protect people he had never met, from a species he barely knew. That's the kind of strength that builds lasting peace." Kevin felt the weight of his brother's metal on his chest, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a reminder of the responsibility they all shared, to protect each other, to understand each other, and to build a galaxy where everyone belonged. "So what's next?" Kevin asked, looking around at the incredible scene of interspecies cooperation and friendship. Keanu smiled, that gentle, wise smile that had become famous across the galaxy. "Next, we keep building bridges," he said. "One conversation at a time, one friendship at a time, one act of understanding at a time." As Kevin looked around the hall at hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds working together in harmony, he knew that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their ability to turn enemies into friends, to find common ground in the most unlikely places. The G